Happy Friday to you, everyone. I'm back in the 901, and I'm telling you, look how white my arms are. They haven't seen the sun in over 3 weeks because I was up in the mountains. It's a lot colder there than it is here. So I'm just sporting a vest and short sleeve shirt, but I'm excited to be back here because why? We're going to be starting a little mini series on tracking. And when I say tracking, let me just kind of clear up some terminology real quick because you can read it a million different ways. What I'm talking about is teaching you and your dog how to track another human. Yeah, can that translate later into finding an object, finding some prey if you're a hunter, maybe even finding a lost dog at some point? It can. But for right now, we're just going to be going over the fundamentals of teaching your dog how to track a human. Okay, so let me kind of go over just a little bit of theory, just kind of cover that ground first. And then, yeah, no pun intended, that's pretty good, huh? Cover that ground, see what I'm talking about? Okay, see, I'm excited, really excited about tracking because I love it. I'm going to tell you why you're going to love it too because it's going to be so good for you and your dog. Okay, but to go over a little bit of theory, a little bit of science behind it, what is tracking? All right, for years, the ability of insects and animals to follow odor plumes to their source has been studied. And it's been studied kind of in two different categories. You have flyers and you have walkers. All right, so of course our dog, unless you have a special dog, is going to be walking. But I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about the two of them. I'm kind of draw here on my little pad here. So I'm going to be drawing a little bit upside down, so bear with me on this. Okay, so you have this odor source sitting right here. All right, and out of that odor source, typically downwind of it is what's called an odor plume. And usually about in the middle of it is the highest average scent concentration. So when an insect or an animal detects this odor plume, they will start to follow it. Have you ever watched a fly zigzagging through the air, or even other insects like a moth zigzagging left and right and left and right? And you wonder, do you not know where you're going? That looks like me driving sometimes, especially way back in the day before they had iPhones that guided us everywhere. I'd be over here, just trying to find my way from point A to point B. Well, what they're doing in all actuality is that's how they're discovering the odor plume and how to follow it, because they'll fly or walk, if you're a walker, out to the edge. And then all of a sudden, about right here, the average scent concentration weakens greatly to a point where in some cases it's gone. It's not there. So then they'll weave back in and weave back in. You see these big old exaggerated as they follow this elongated cloud of molecules in the air downwind from the source, or if you're a walking dog, combination of that and just above the trail left by the prey or left by the person walking away from you. And they'll just kind of keep this up going back and forth, and all of a sudden you'll notice they'll get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and then finally straight in to the source. And that's what they're doing, kind of like feeling the air. Think of it like you're in this really dark, pitch black, dark corridor, and you want to find your way along that corridor. So you kind of go out to the edge and you touch a wall, and maybe you move away from the wall and you touch the other wall, and then this wall, and then you notice the walls start becoming more narrow till finally it's a tight fit, and bam, that's the door leading out of your corridor. But that's what they're doing with senses. They're using their senses to detect this odor plume and then follow it to the origin of it. Okay, now where's tracking different? Well, first of all, tracking a walker in comparison to a flyer takes advantage of the contact scent laid by the track layer. So not only are they following this odor plume, but they're also following the contact scent. Hence, that would probably be like the bottom of your shoes. It would be skin molecules falling off of you, little skin rafts, maybe some lint, some, whatever, hair from another dog you've been petting, what have you. All of these things, once the animal determines that they belong to you, the animal will use them and then again go back and forth and weave around till they move themselves along that tight corridor, and it gets more and more narrow as they move along. So that's one of the biggest advantages between, and that's why for years when I trained dogs that had to find people and find them under any condition, I trained tracking dogs, dogs that would put their nose within millimeters of both the odor plume, the molecules hanging down there low to the ground, and the contact scent. Because odor plumes are pretty much dependent upon wind. You get the other direction of this thing over here on this side, and you may never even know it's there, never even know to put your nose to the ground to determine if something is there. So that's typically how a wolf does in a wild animal. They'll kind of course back and forth on the landscaping in the forest and in the valleys. And they've kind of learned through latent learning and through also just flat out cause and effect, biofeedback, bio learning, that there are certain areas in which there's food patches. We've discussed that in previous videos. And they've also learned where the wind is best. Where do they smell it the best? Where does it aid them the most? And you can tell that. I remember shooting in the military. You shoot across a valley, and it's way different than shooting straight across the ground. Things change the trajectory of a bullet by going across a valley. Wind changes. And just think about yourself. Walk in a city sometime with big skyscrapers, like the Windy City, Chicago. I've been there. I've been walking along the street and thinking, man, I thought they called this the Windy City. There's nothing to it. Till I rounded that corner on that skyscraper, and then all of a sudden about got blown over. And now I'm going, oh, now I know why you call it the Windy City. And the problem is, if you have to go several blocks, at some point you're sitting there scratching your head going, is there a way for me to get from here to there, other than a subway, that I can avoid this wind altogether? Quite a challenge to get that thing done. But just imagine that's what your dog will be doing in a sense. Even while we're tracking, unless you track in a wide open area, which we'll start with, but later on you may track through a forest, you may track over a hill, down in a valley. And when you do this, that air plume, that odor plume will vary greatly because of the wind. At one moment the dog has no wind. Again, another example I can use is drive by a semi truck on a really windy day, especially if you're on a motorcycle. All of a sudden there's nothing. Then all of a sudden you get past the semi truck and wham! Or you get right behind the semi truck and you're going all over the place. Wind does affect the terrestrial animals or the walkers who are depending greatly upon terrestrial scent. And that's why it really helps them, because at least they can get their nose within millimeters of the odor source, of the material for that odor, versus a flyer who really can't do that. You fly that low to the ground, what we used to call map of the earth flying, and there's a good chance you're going to run into something. So again, they kind of learn maybe from watching the other flyer that, no, I'll just maintain a little bit more altitude up here and see if I can just find it wind-wise. Okay, but wind orientation, as far as, again, your dog, that's going to be something that will affect your dog and something that we will use. Hence, while we first start tracking, we're going to do our best to track upwind of the source. To use this, many years ago, I mean, I'm talking three decades ago, when tracking started becoming popular in the United States, when they started having tracking certificates that you could earn for your dog certifications, and people started to get into a budding sport here, not overseas, but here in Schutzen, in which tracking was required. They would practice everything that they could to make sure that the dog's nose was to the ground and not up, and hence a lot of the tracking was done downwind, moving just right down the odor source, going the opposite direction of what a wild animal would. But again, I've spent a great deal of my life observing wild animals and how they behave and how they do what's known as chemotactic reactions. They use a chemotactic reaction. In fact, that turning right here, just counter turning, that's a chemotactic reaction. They're reacting to the chemicals of that scent source. And I've observed that. I've watched what they do, and I preach all the time about our dogs being still so very close to being wild. Why not do what they instinctually would do on their own? If you weren't teaching them this, and they had to locate a food source, how would they do it? How would they? Okay, also, as you're moving along there, I kind of think of it between the two, between really what we call scenting. For example, a lot of search and rescue work depends upon more scenting than man tracking. It just does. So that would be the difference. Kind of an example I can give you would be you throwing the ball, like me throwing that ball for captain. It arcs through the air, boom, and it lands in the ground. And the other day when I showed that in a video while I was up in the mountains, if you watch Captain, you watched him kind of do the exact same thing here, back and forth, using that wind to help him until he picked up that odor source and he located where was the highest concentrated average of that scent source, which was in the middle of that plume cloud, and he followed that right to the ball and snatched the ball up. Okay, now the other example would be me tying Captain back, making him stay or whatever. I walk to a certain place, set the ball down, and keep him from doing this right here by restraining him on a leash, requiring him to actually use more of the terrestrial scent. Put his nose within millimeters of this, again, average scent concentration area, which is dead smack typically in the odor plume. And I would want to do that, and you're going to do that, and the reason being is it helps out when you don't have the wind to help you, when you just are not wind aided in any way, or if you have a gusting wind, a really just powerful wind, kind of like every now and then the gust is whipping out here. That can throw the dog off, and now all of a sudden you're spending all of this valuable time. Sometimes when you're tracking a human, catching the bad guy or saving someone is a matter of mere seconds to minutes. You can't allow the dog to be going all over the stinking earth trying to get the wind. You need them to put their nose to the ground and rely on that when the wind doesn't help them. I remember years ago, this is again back in the early 90s, as a police officer, I was called out at 2 a.m. in the morning because an elderly lady that was suffering from Alzheimer's and walked away from her home at 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, might not have been the greatest issue or the most urgent issue had it not been for the fact that it was 7 degrees. So as you can imagine, timing was paramount. The urgency was paramount. Find this woman, find her quickly. And thankfully, it was a windless night and it was cold. And my dog had been trained. I trained him to track, put your nose to the ground. So that's what he did. He put his nose to the ground, and we found her and saved her life. That's incredibly rewarding. That is something that you'll carry with you the rest of your life. And it's something that your dog may be able to do. You may be able to volunteer your assistance once your dog is trained. Okay, so that's a little bit different between scenting and tracking. Again, just kind of think of that ball example that I gave you with Captain. Arching through the air, boom, now you got to go find it. You can't rely upon a trail because there is no trail. The darn thing flew through the air, fell out of the heavens, and smacked into the ground, and there it is. Versus Bryan going and setting it down somewhere. Now you need to follow where Bryan went and then locate the ball. Well, we're going to be doing the latter. We're going to be following a scent trail and locating the source, whatever's at the end of that trail. And there'll be many things, and we'll cover that as we move along. Okay, so a big question I get asked all the time is, because tracking, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of people think I have a dog, and my dog's not one of those German Shepherds or Belgian Malinois or a bloodhound. Oh my gosh, talk about a tracking machine. Genetically artificial selection. I tell you, we took all the options, every option a la carte that you could put into an animal to track another human being, and we put it in that dog right there, a bloodhound. Nothing like it. Man, those big floppy ears, they're like bristles on a vacuum cleaner. They're just pulling these molecules up, and they're shoving them right up that vacuum cleaner with all those scent receptors and that terminating scroll up here that can break down that scent into even greater than a periodic table. It's amazing what a bloodhound can do. I've seen it many, many times, and every time I walked away, I just went, dang wolves. I think we got one up on you on this one here. Yeah, it's incredible. But I've also seen toy poodles track. Yeah, believe it or not, I've seen pugs track. Yeah, my claim to fame, what I just call my little claim to fame, is I got a TD title on an English bulldog. I got to prove it, got paperwork. So yeah, it's quite amazing. You can train a dog to track that would normally have a difficult time breathing on its own, but it's all about just motivating it. Why would you want to do this in the first place? So let's talk about real quickly, and then we're going to get off this video today, and tomorrow we'll get into some more stuff about tracking. But why tracking? First of all, I cannot think of a better thing to do that's more team building than tracking. It requires both of you. In real life tracks, you got to sometimes think for the dog. Yeah, you've got to think. You've got to work together and say, I know you want to go that way, dog. I know you do. But I'm telling you, that's a straight drop off, 600 feet drop off, and it's a mile across that canyon. So therefore, logic dictates that that person didn't go that way unless they're laying down there at the bottom of this. But I'm looking, there's no body. They must have gone this way. Sometimes you got to work together as a team. So this is a great team building thing. Plus it's exercise. Man, tell you got to get out there. It's exercise for you and your dog. And I tell you what's actually more exercise almost for you. You're the one that's going to be laying the track. Yeah. Who's your dog going to track to start with? You. Whose scent does your dog know better than anyone else's scent? Yours. So you bet your dog will be tracking you, which means you got to lay the track. And then you get to run your dog on the track. And then if you left anything out there on the track, which you will at first, you got to go back and get it. So man, super exercise, super. And also it's outdoors. Yeah, you can track indoors. You can teach a dog to track indoors, but for most of us, what's the point? If it's indoors, lock the doors and then start doing a building search until you finally get to the person. No, that's different. Maybe police canines do that. I train my dog to do that, but you're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to get outdoors, which is great for social distancing right now. There you go. So man, you got it. It works your brain too, man. I'm telling you what. Again, I told you how you guys have to work together as a team. It works your dog's brain. Your dog has to think. Go out there and feel the edges of those corridors and then work my way down those corridors. What's the difference between this odor versus that odor? You know, I noticed on the trail that smells a little bit like Bryan, there's treats. Over here, there's no treats. And neither over there. They kind of tend to be down the middle of this little path here. Yes, they got to use their brain. They have to think, problem solve, work this thing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Man, they're working it. They're even running this scent up into the roof of their mouth. Their vernacular right there, around the roof of their mouth. Man, they can almost taste the scent. It's awesome. Plus, you also have to think as the trainer about many things. The environment. You got to think about the environment. Is it a good day to track? Is it a bad day to track? Is the environment going to help my beginning dog? An advanced dog? We really don't care so much for the environment. We just go for it. But in the beginning, you do. Again, you got to make it simple for the dog to learn. Don't make it so difficult that they just say, "Get this, man." It was like me with math. I mean, golly, I'm sitting there going, what's the point? All I need is basic math. Just tell me how much money I got in the bank, how much I don't have, and how far I can shoot this thing from a distance, whatever. Yeah, if you make it hard, then you're going to lose the animal's motivation. You also have to plan the track. Okay, plan the track. You've got to know, where am I going to lay this track? How far am I going to lay this track? How many treats am I going to put on this track? Yeah, there's a lot to think about. There's also, you've got to, another thing is carry a notebook with you. And you've got to actually record what you're doing. You have to record it. You need to know. Along the track, in the beginning, we'll be laying what we call track markers. And these are things that will aid you in knowing exactly where the track is. Because again, like in anything, I don't like big mistakes. A dog can learn to be afraid. A dog can also learn to make big mistakes. And you let those big mistakes go on and on and on and on, and I tell you what, you have a big problem. So in the beginning, it's going to be very imperative that you know exactly where the track is. So you don't allow for those big mistakes. Therefore, in the beginning, we will utilize track markers. And you'll need to go fetch those unless you have an endless supply of them once the track is over. So again, you need a little logbook. And then as soon as we get out of a little bit of the beginning phase, I'm going to talk to you guys about you don't get to put those markers down any longer. Those can be like a dog connecting the dots and aid the dog follow its way from point A to point B. And you don't want that because in real life, there'll be no track markers that you put down. So therefore, you will have to learn how to mark your track on a notebook by using landmarks, lining up two objects, all sorts of things. I'll teach it to you so you know exactly where your track is. Because it's easy when it's only 50 feet long. It's a whole different story when when the darn thing's over a mile long, especially going through different terrain. You need to know where it is in training so you don't allow for big mistakes. And then towards the very end there, a couple things I really like about this, just kind of like non-scientific, is it's you and your dog kind of get to be wild for a bit. Yeah, you're a team. You almost get to be like wild creatures. It's way cool. Your dog is smelling, you're moving along, you're aiding, you're helping the animal. It's like you are two wild animals working in tandem, working in together. Yes, and where do you get to do that? Yeah, where do you get to do that? You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it, I promise you. Okay, and then last thing, once you get there at the very end, and you've worked long after I've run this series, because this series is only going to run for, I haven't even figured it out yet. I just got to get into it and then I'll let you know. But maybe 3 or 4 days, man, you're going to be training your dog for 3 or 4 months before it really reaches any level of real proficiency. And then it could be even a full year for some of these dogs before they're at a level that you could actually volunteer your assistance to find someone. And I'm telling you what, if that happens, that is something that'll be parked in your heart for the rest of your life. It's something that'll make you smile. Because again, I've always said there's numbers on your tombstone, but what matters the most is that little dash in between. And that's important. So again, I want you guys to have that opportunity because I've lived it many times, and it makes me excited about tracking. All right, so I'll be using Cattle Dog. He's not had one moment of tracking. I promise you that. You'll tell it. Shoot, when I show it on the camera, you're going to find out. He doesn't know a darn thing about tracking. He knows that air plume thing. You saw that, absolutely. But putting his nose to the ground, he doesn't. So we'll get started with him, and then we'll move along. And, of course, I'm going to advance in the information I'm going to give you on tracking a lot faster than what Catherine will proceed through, a lot faster than your dog will. You just save the videos, go watch them later, and then practice it. And I'll be chiming in every now and then on future videos, showing some advanced stuff as I continue with Captain and try and advance him along in his tracking. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. I hope you know there's a little bit of a difference between really kind of what we call scent trailing or search and rescue type scenting versus man tracking. What is the difference? One depends more upon air molecules. One depends upon air molecules that are hugging the ground millimeters off the track itself. They also, terrestrial animals and walkers, get to rely upon contact scent left by the track layer. We talked about why would you want to track in the first place, teach your dog how to do that, and I hope I motivate you enough to do it, or at least give it a try. And tomorrow we're going to go over equipment, because you do need to have some equipment with you to do this and do it properly. And we'll talk about the various types of equipment that you'll need to have, and we'll also talk about treats, because we'll be using treats to motivate our dog to begin with. Because again, there's a reason for it. I did a video, oh God, it seemed like it was months ago, but I talked about intersecting the T. How does an animal know when it comes across the track, turn right or turn left? Am I going to go back to the old woman's house, or will I know to go to the old woman? Yeah, I got to know that. Treats will play a big hand in teaching your dog the difference in which direction to take. Okay, so that's it for today. So be ready for tomorrow. Get your little notepad. Make sure you got your notepad, because you'll need to be writing down this equipment, and you'll need to go procure this equipment, and then we're going to get started. You won't need a whole lot to start with, but as we move along, you will need more. So I'll tell you where you can get it and what you should get. It's not a big shopping list. Don't worry about it. And we'll go over that equipment tomorrow. And then after that, we're on the way. We're going to get started. So I hope you guys look forward to it, because I know I certainly do. All right, I'm out of here. I got stuff to do now that I'm back here. As soon as I get back into the city, everybody wants my attention. So I got to go pay attention to a few people and get some stuff done today. You guys go do the same. While you're doing it, be safe.